Hello everyone, it's Jordan from Silico's Customer Success team. Today we're going to be looking at how insights identified during process and task mining can help organisations measure and achieve their long-term business and strategic objectives, such as ESG metrics, using Silico's business process simulation platform. Effective ESG strategy is at the forefront of many organisations and investors alike, with government initiatives such as Net Zero by 2050 driving massive changes for how organisations conduct business. Tools such as process mining are great at identifying existing issues and tracking system outcomes, but this is only possible once they've occurred. It can be time consuming and requires in-depth analysis to link these outcomes back to business objectives, and even more challenging to analyse what impacts could occur if your process was to change in the future. This is where business process simulation steps in. It enables organisations to create as-is and to-be versions of the processes, testing and trying alternatives in a simulation environment. These processes can not only be optimised for effectiveness, but can also be linked to outcomes that matter most to those organisations, such as revenue generation, customer satisfaction, and carbon emissions. On screen, you can see an order-to-cash process, which has been taken from process mining data into a Silico simulation model. This model allows the organisation to link their processes directly to commercial and operational outcomes. From this, we can enhance the model further by adding ESG metrics such as carbon emission, power consumption, and waste generation. Giving organisations a view of how their processes impact key ESG objectives and enable them to forecast into the future to see if their current processes are up to the task of achieving net zero. Areas of improvement can be easily identified, process structures and inputs can be changed, and then stress tested in a safe environment. In this particular example, the organisation was looking at ways in which they could improve their order-to-cash process, but in turn limit any negative environmental factors such as carbon emission generated by their delivery vehicles. We're now going to take a look at some of the ESG metrics that we created for this simulation. As you can see, actions such as transport return rates or waste generation due to returned items can be accounted for and simulated over any period of time, allowing this organisation to see where the biggest ESG challenges lie and taking corrective actions to improve their position. So just taking a look through some of the ESG metrics, we've got energy consumption, carbon emissions, and waste generation. And we can set variables for waste generated per order or return rates that might come through the process, and equally carbon emitted per delivery and any emissions that might contributed due to an item being returned. And then also energy consumption, so as users within that organisation use systems or other operational equipment, we can account for that energy consumption and forward simulate that to see what sort of impacts it's going to have in the long term. So as you can see, we've got a slider at the bottom where we can move forward the simulation and see what sort of impacts this is happening. So we can see on carbon emission, as we move the simulation forward, the cumulative carbon emissions have increased, and we can see the average CO2 emissions per order. Process improvement teams can look at ways in which they can improve the current processes to target these particular metrics. So on the variant panels, which is on the left-hand side of Silico, we can look at different as-is and to-be process models that the organisation wanted to test. So we're going to have a look at the no waiting time and automation within the process to see what sort of impacts this would have on the ESG metrics. So we can see what changes would occur across energy consumption, carbon emissions, and waste generation by adopting that particular process change. These metrics are not limited to those which you can see in the current model. Silico's got the flexibility to incorporate any metrics that are important to your ESG strategy and your overall business outcomes. In addition to having the flexibility to change and test different process structures, ESG teams and decision makers can utilise Silico's intuitive dashboards to guide data-driven decision making across their organisation. We're going to take a look at those dashboards now. So you'll be able to see on screen the dashboard feature within Silico, and we're going to take a look at the ESG dashboard. So on the ESG dashboard, we can simulate forwards in time, allowing users to try differing scenarios and strategies, and then they can see those results in real time in a clear and visual way. So much like when we were looking at the simulation model before, we can bring forwards our simulation in time and see what sort of impacts this is happening to our key ESG objectives. Using Silico's scenario feature, we can also set different scenarios which could occur across our organisation, and then we can test what sort of impact this will have on our key ESG objectives as well as our commercial objectives as well. So there's two different scenarios that we're going to take a look at. There's a growth of 10% on our orders and a headcount reduction of 10%. So if I go into scenarios and I'll choose both of these, we can see quite easily the impacts that both have across our ESG objectives. And much like before, we can pinpoint this through time and see what happens over the course of the next year or 10 years, whatever period of time a decision maker may wish to look at as part of their strategy. And we can further expand on this by using input controls within the dashboards. So we're going to take a look at our renewable energy mix that's being used within our organisation at the moment and see if there's anything that we can do over the next couple of years to positively impact our carbon emissions and our energy consumption. So to do that, we can go onto the energy mix input and you can see at the moment that we haven't got a renewable energy mix really within the process. It's at 0%, so definitely some room for improvement or some areas and objectives that we can set. So you can see at the moment our carbon emissions are quite high. So if we look to go to a more renewable energy source over the course of the next few years, we can see what sort of impact this may have. So by aiming for 80% renewable energy, approximately within the next year or so, we can see the reduction that we achieve on our carbon emissions. We can also combine these different inputs to kind of see if there's any compounding effects of doing so. So by changing our process to have a higher rate of electric vehicles delivering for us, we can see what sort of reduction in carbon that we can achieve. So if we go into our electric vehicle adoption, so at the moment we're at 0%, so we'll kind of set ourselves a fairly optimistic goal. We're going to try and steadily go for 100% renewable 100% renewable energy and 100% electric vehicles over the next year and a half. So you can see that drastically reduces our carbon emissions. However, it's noted that we do have an increase in our cumulative power consumption due to the fact that we'll be charging these electric vehicles within our organisation. Our power consumption has increased. So Silico dashboards really allow users to add any values, graphs or charts that are important to that decision-making process, giving the ability to see things like cumulative values such as total energy consumption or average values such as carbon emission per order. And finally, we can explore how reducing our return rate percentage within our order to cash process can help achieve better results on what we've already seen from going towards a more renewable energy source and going to a fully electric delivery fleet. So we'll go on to our return rate. We've got quite a high return rate for goods at the moment. It's at 5%, and that's reflected in our carbon emissions as well as our cumulative waste generation. So what we can do is, let's say we want to set ourselves a goal to reduce that to 2%. So we can see that the drastic impact that has on the waste that's generated within our business, and also the positive benefit that comes from that on carbon emissions as well, as less items are being returned to us and less redeliveries due to mistakes. So it's having some real positive impacts across our process. So using business process simulation with Silico to run forward-looking scenarios linked directly to your processes really does provide valuable insights and understandable metrics that help drive your organisation from a sustainability idea to a sustainable action. So to learn more about how business process simulation via Silico can help your ESG strategy, visit silicoai.com and get in contact with one of our business process simulation experts, and we'll be happy to help you. Thank you.